Yo guys, welcome to the video. This is Josh or Milky, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing my druid build that I've been playing for the past few days. Now this build was born because I wanted to play Tornado Druid. Turns out that's pretty hard to do because you need a unique helmet that is incredibly rare and difficult to find, so I needed a build to play in the meantime, and I found something incredibly fun. There's many druid builds out there. There's Shred, there's the new auto attack werewolf build that's going around, there's Pulverize. There's plenty of builds to play, but Trampleslide, as I think people call it, was the one that caught my eye. It looked incredibly fun, and it's the one that I've played. I'm now up to level 78. I'm having a good time, and I'm looking forward to farming even more on it. Hopefully one day dropping that unique helmet. But in this video, I'm going to go over everything to do with the build in case you guys want to give it a try. Enjoy. So the first thing we're going to talk about is leveling the build. How on earth do you get this guy from level 1 to 50 in the easiest way? And being honest, I didn't level conventionally. I'm playing in a duo and we boosted each other to level 50 by power leveling through dungeons like blind burrows. We just kind of sat AFK and played Hearthstone while the other guy ran through dungeons. If you can't do that, then there are a plethora of leveling builds on Maxroll and YouTube that you can check out. But to get this build started, you do need 3 key legendary aspects. So you are going to need to go with a conventional leveling guide until you can get to the point where you have these aspects available to you. Now, speaking of aspects, let's first go into the offensive aspects that we're using and the build enabling ones. The first build enabling one is this one. Trample now summons 6 landslide pillars of earth during its duration that deal 160% normal damage. Trample is now also a nature magic and earth skill. All of these words are very important. It's important to do more damage. It's important for Trample to summon landslides. It basically works as a trigger for landslide. But it's also important that we make Trample and earth skill, and we'll get to why later on. Next, we have the necklace, which we have imprinted with Nature's Fury. This is very important to get on your neck and to have a roll of at least 7 to 8. Normally, it goes from 4 to 8. On an amulet, it will gain 50% of the benefit, and on this particular aspect, that is very, very powerful because you can get it from refunding 8 seconds of your cooldown to 12 seconds of your cooldown. Now, if you look closely, Trample has a 14-second cooldown, so refunding 12 essentially makes it so Trample becomes very low. But how do we trigger Nature's Fury? I'll show quickly. We'll go briefly into the skill tree. Nature's Fury gives you a 1 in 5 chance to trigger a free earth skill whenever you use a storm skill. So you have a 1 in 5 chance of refunding 12 seconds the cooldown of all of your earth skills. That's why it's so important that we make Trample and earth skill. On the neck, we have landslide earth pillars, each strike a second time. So those 6 that you're summoning from Trample become 12. So those are the 3 core aspects that you need to even make the build playable. All of these, I'm afraid to say, you have to drop. They don't come in the codex, which is why you can't really level strictly as this build. But finally, in terms of offense, we have increased damage while you have barrier active, and then natural balance, which means when you cast a storm skill, your earth skills gain between 30 and 45 additional critical strike damage. So this is a separate multiplier. So those are the offensive options. We'll then look at the defensive options now. Defensively, we have 4 important aspects. The first of which is going to give us 20% damage reduction for a number of seconds when you use a basic skill. Because you have to use basic skills to refund the cooldown on your Trample, of course, this is pretty much always going to be up. Next, we have the duration of Earthen Bulwark is increased by 6 seconds. Typically, it is only 3 seconds, so this goes up to 9. Which is very, very strong because this is also an earth skill, so we can refund the cooldown of it and essentially have a permanent earthen bulwark. Then we have the ability to gain more barrier from our earthen bulwark up to a maximum of 100%. This happens when we crowd control enemies, which this build does all the time. And then finally, we have when we're fortified, our earth skills gain +2 ranks. So this works for Trample, it works for landslide, and it works for earthen bulwarks. Now we'll go over the skills briefly. This will be shown in the description below. There will be a link to a builder if you want to access it that way. But we'll talk about my skill selections and what you could potentially do differently depending on what level of the build you're at. I went for Wind Shear because it gives me movement speed. It gives me up to 20% additional movement speed, which is very, very strong. However, if you don't have a guaranteed source of vulnerable that you gain from a glyph called Exploit, I would recommend using Storm Strike, as it, instead of having a 20% chance to make enemies vulnerable, you instead have a 50% chance. So Storm Strike is a very viable alternative to Wind Shear. Try them both out, see which one you prefer. Then, of course, Landslide, our most important core skill. We're going to be triggering this with our Trample. You can self-cast this. There are going to be mobs that you want to self-cast this on. Things like defensive mobs that give a defensive aura. Things like bubble mobs. because when you do trample, you're going to knock everything away, and it's not always going to stand in your landslide. So there are occasions where you also want to self-cast the landslide. The rest of the nodes just serve to give us more damage and also to immobilize enemies after we hit them a number of times. All the small nodes will be in the description. I won't go over all of them. You can see them there. Then we have, of course, Earthen Bulwark, which we've already mentioned. Very, very important defensively. It's a good source of Unstoppable, as well as Fortify. And then Poison Creeper. This is a very important part of the build, both offensively and defensively. A big source of defense is the ability to just immobilize all enemies. Fantastic. They can't move. Well, you can stay out of range and they're not going to kill you. Great start. And then next, we can poison enemies. We can almost always poison them. We'll get to why later, but poison them is very important because of the Envenom passive, which means that enemies take 30% additional crit damage. So this is a separate multiplier. Huge DPS increase. Definitely one of the stronger parts of the build. Very important that you take Poison Creeper. Then Hurricane again grants us something we can't really access anywhere else. Yeah, we can get lots and lots of damage reduction, but what we can't do everywhere else is cause the enemies to deal less damage. Now, they are very distinct and they are separate things. So causing enemies to deal less damage, having a source of this is very, very powerful. It's just they deal 20% less damage, and then all the damage comes in and it gets reduced by a damage reduction. Very strong defensive tool. Definitely something to have. Of course, Trample goes without saying, right? And then finally, we have Nature's Fury. Again, all the small passives will be in the builder I linked. Now, as I mentioned with the Poison Creeper, of course, we can actually reset its cooldown very frequently. And the way that we do that is with Spirit Boons. This is the specialization of the Druid class. You'll know all about this if you've played it already. What you want to do is head on over to, what's it called? This one? Dulra. You go over here, you talk to your guy, and you can offer the aspects, the kind of ghost spirits, that's what they're called. You can offer them the offerings, and then you gain access to their powers. And these are very, very strong. So we'll start off, we gain 10% reduced damage from elites, from wariness. Pretty nice. Nothing to write home about, though. Then we'll move on to the second row. This is where it gets juicy. We have the choice of getting either 10% additional life or plus 10% attack speed. I've been tinkering with both. I actually like the attack speed. It's a pretty difficult stat to get in this game, so getting it here is pretty nice. And then 30% additional crit damage. Sure, seems very strong compared to the other points. I'll take it. 30% additional crit damage, all right? And then Lucky Hit, this is where we get the ability to reset our Poison Creeper's cooldown. On Lucky Hit, when we crit, we have an up to a 20% chance to reset the cooldowns of companion skills. This is because we hit so many times with Landslide, it's constantly just hitting loads of mobs over and over again. Then we're going to get to refund that cooldown and constantly have this source of poison and immobilize. In the last tree, this build doesn't really generate that much from the last tree, unfortunately. This Masochistic is an incredibly powerful node that we just can't take advantage of because we're not shapeshifting. Calm Before the Storm, again, incredibly powerful, but we're not using an ult. Obsidian Slam, nah, it's whatever. We're not overpowering, we're not pulverized, right? So we're left with Overload. It's not terrible, but it's not the best. We deal a bit of lightning damage. Sure, why not? But that's the Spirit Boons, and they offer some very, very strong sources of offense and some nice quality of life with Pack Leader. Now for the thing that I've probably had the most problems with in this build, and it's figuring out the Paragon board. This probably won't be the final iteration of the Paragon tree. Check the description on the builder. I'll probably have an updated version, but this is what I'm going with right now. We start off in the regular tree, of course. We're grabbing all the strong rare nodes. Also, we get some big life nodes here. Percent life is pretty difficult to come by in this game. So getting this percent life to combine with those large flat life rolls you have on your gear means we have 6,100. We have 6,244 life, which is a very strong pool to work with. Then, of course, the exploit glyph giving us that vulnerable. You obviously have to get 25 dexterity within range, and then all enemies you hit will be vulnerable for 3 seconds. Very, very strong. Next, we are in the Ancestral Guidance tree. This is the one I'm a bit iffy on. I don't want to pay all the respect points right now, but we are in here. We're grabbing some Maximum Spirit, some Spirit on Kill, a lot of core skill damage, which we also have here, and it's also improved by the Earth and Sky glyph. Earth and Sky increases the effect of magic nodes in the radius, so this is giving us some core skill damage, dex, in resistance. But also, as well as that, it gives us the additional bonus, which causes our skills to deal 10% additional damage. So very strong. Then we come into Earthen Devastation. We want to get this as soon as possible because our Earth skills will deal 30% more damage. Very, very strong. If anything, I will likely swap this tree with Ancestral Guidance, so then I can flip this and drop a lot of this side. I'll gain a few points there, because the Spirit isn't all that important. And then finally, we come into the Inner Beast Tree, which grants us attack speed. Attack speed, again, a very difficult stat to come by in this game. So getting it on the Paragon board is a no-brainer to me. 2.5, 1.3, 1.3, 1.3, very, very strong nodes. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, life and armor. Armor's just broken in this game. And then percent life, again, a very difficult stat to come by. So getting it on the Paragon tree is the perfect choice. So that's Paragon tree. I'm going to tinker with it. It's probably going to be better in the future, and I will update the builder with any changes I make to improve this. But that is how it stands right now. Now, finally, the biggest one, obviously, the gear. What do we go for? Now, we'll split this into offense and defense. So first of all, we have a high item power, high DPS, two-handed weapon. Staff is strictly better as the implicit is much stronger, but just go with whichever one gives you the highest DPS for now. You can get willpower, crit damage with earth skills, damage to close enemies, vulnerable damage. All these things are very, very strong. My weapon's actually pretty bad, so don't use this as something to go off. This is just the best one I have at the moment because it has the perfect aspect. Then we have rings, which are a great source of critical strike chance, vulnerable damage, crit damage. We also have flat life on them. And then finally for offense, we want levels of landslide. Levels is how we're going to get additional base damage. It's pretty difficult to get base damage in this game outside of your weapon and levels. So getting more levels, very, very important. Attack speed, again, a very difficult stat to come by. So getting it on the gloves is very good. Also, you can get high crit damage on the gloves. Would definitely recommend doing this. So that's kind of the offensive things to look out for. The more utility-based things would be the movement speed. Druids are pretty slow. You don't have the best mobility skills. Trample, yeah, but that's also our damage skill, so we don't just want to be wasting it. So getting move speed on both your amulet and boots is going to make the build feel a lot better, and I would definitely recommend going for these. The rest of the rolls, for now, for me at least, aren't that great. Spirit cost reduction, whatever. Earth skill damage, great. Bit of percent in. And then on the boots, we have like Fortify Generation, Spirit Cost Reduction, and Poison Res. Then we have the helmet, which is a great source of life. We get 702 here. We also get life on kill, which is a very, very good stat. The chest, damage reduction is very good on chest. You get damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, close range enemies, just flat damage reduction, percent armor. Earth skill damage is a decent offensive option. Some willpower, again, good offensively. You can get a lot of things on your chest. Look out for those things I just mentioned. Damage reduction, armor, and then earth skill damage, probably your best ones to go for. The legs, this is probably my best defensive piece of gear. We have 3 sources of damage reduction. We have damage reduction while fortified, flat damage reduction, and damage reduction from close enemies, as well as total percent armor. And armor, as I said, is completely broken in this game, so getting percent armor, very, very strong. That ends up meaning we're a very tanky character. I'm actually missing, I need to take the Royal Skull out of here and put it in there. So we'll actually be closer to 6,000 armor, 6,000 life, 6,000 attack power. That worked out pretty nicely, didn't it? Didn't mean for it to be that way, but that is the way it ended up. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you want to give Trampleslide Druid a go. I hope this video helps you if you do choose to do so. All the links will be in the description. And if you want to check me out on stream, it's twitch.tv/MilkyBK. I'll see you next time.